The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're located. Thank you so much for joining today's live session. My name is Megan Dollins, and I'm with the partner marketing team here at Adobe. We have been running a digital experience webinar series for about a year on the Magento commerce side, and I'm very excited to welcome our very first Marketo focused team here to bring you a really great customer success story. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we kick things off. You have joined in listen only mode, so you're automatically muted, but there are a lot of ways that you can interact with us today throughout the webinar. You can use your GoToWebinar control panel to raise your hand, ask a question, chat with me directly. We will also have a Q&A at the end of the session, depending on time. I'm thinking we have about 45 minutes of content. So send in those questions. We will get to as many as we possibly can during that session. And then we'll also have your contact information, so we'll be able to follow up with you if we're not able to address that on today's phone call. So again, thank you so much. And I am going to introduce our A team here today, David Lewis and David Eldred. I'm going to hand things over to you guys now.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for having us, and thanks everybody for joining. And appreciate you running keyboards as David and I do vocals today for the webinar. Hey, great to connect with all of you. Thank you for joining again. As you can see, my name's David Lewis. I'm the founder and CEO of DemandGen. And just to kind of set up who's who, DemandGen is an agency that helps companies with the use and adoption of marketing technologies like Marketo, which you're going to hear a lot about today. And my team has worked with David and his team on their journey. And I'm very pleased to introduce David Eldred, who runs marketing and digital experience for Rivermark Credit Union. So he and I will kind of ping pong back and forth and share some great examples of how to drive revenue and how to drive growth. And I think you guys are going to take a lot away. So David, thank you for joining me, and I guess we'll dive in.
Yeah, great to be here, David. Thank you for having me.
All right. So let's talk about just then and now, depending on when your career started in marketing, just a quick look back. You know, I remember very early on in my career, I always felt that, sales was marketing's customer. We were producing collateral, we were producing packaging, we were producing sales aids for the sales team when I got started way back when. And many of us can relate to this in terms of the changes that have taken place. And these changes are really been driven by a couple key things. One started with the desktop computer, giving people a way to interact with others thanks to the internet. And then the almost ubiquity, well, probably full ubiquity of smartphones. And the smartphone combined with high-speed internet has enabled buyers to have a completely different education and buying experience with you, with your products and with your services. But the other thing that's changed dramatically is marketing's responsibility. Like I said, maybe collateral, but also lead generation. Marketing is driving revenue. And you're going to hear today how David and his team are revenue drivers at Rivermark Credit Union and how they're using data and running campaigns to grow revenue within their install base, but also do acquisition. As we get into that, I just want to set the stage and teach you guys a little methodology called the D3 methodology that we can take a look at. So the D3 methodology that DemandGen developed and that we bring to our customers is this holistic model for maximizing revenue. And you see this picture there on your screen of what's actually called in the physical world a planetary gear system. And the planetary gear system is this type of engine. So if you are a growth engine in your business, the metaphor of showing you an engine is very relevant. And that engine is designed to grow revenue. And how does it work? Well, it's got a number of critical parts. And I'm going to just break those parts away for you right now so that you can see them. And I'll describe what they are and how this is used to drive revenue. By the way, I did hear on the news, Megan, that puzzles are like, 50, 80% growth in puzzle purchasing right now. So here's a puzzle for us. This is the puzzle we have to put together for our business. So take a look. Behind the scenes in this gear, this is an engine that's typically used for like helicopters and marine equipment and even the car transmission. It's a very high output, high torque engine. And what a better metaphor, right? to use for driving revenue in your company. What you can see there is that all this has to get done through alignment, through sales and marketing and customer service. You're going to hear David talk about what he's done there. Then you've got that outside component that is about your people and your technology and data and analytics. And our partner Adobe provides phenomenal technology for driving growth and driving engagement, and then tools and technologies that bring data forward so that marketers and sales team have incredible insights to driving the business, and tools like analytics. So that outside ring gear, as it's called, houses everything together. And then the revenue meter goes in the middle. And then you see those planetary gears, they're called, the different blue gears. And it's so important in marketing and sales and customer success to think about scaling your revenue in these three ways: demand creation, demand management, and demand expansion. So if we reassemble this gear system and take a look at it again in its entirety, you can see that in the middle is the revenue gear. Meg, if you can just advance us. Thanks. So that revenue gear, controlling the output of that, is really driven by those three planetary gears. Demand creation, often called lead generation. Demand management was all about capabilities like scoring and nurturing, stuff that Dave is going to dive into today. And that's a real big focus at Rivermark Credit Union, is not just generating leads and throwing them over the wall, but actually taking that lead generation or demand creation and moving them through the buying process. And then demand expansion, taking your install base and growing revenue within there. So that's the planetary gear system. It serves as a wonderful metaphor. And I just want to let you guys know, and I'll say this again at the end, that we are going to send you some materials that dive into this methodology deeper for you, because what you'll take away from what we're going to send you, which we won't cover today, is you see all those teeth on the gears, all the different teeth on every one of those planetary gears. They symbolize the initiatives that you need to take, the things that you need to do, and the materials we have really unpack that. And you're going to have David go through that today and start right now unpacking for you what they've been doing at Rivermark. But let's start, David, with your goals and the journey as you set out.
Right, exactly. You know, we made our leap into marketing automation with you know, initial discussions around a typical marketing project, which was kind of redesigning the website. And back then, this is a little over three and a half years ago, we wanted to use data to personalize the website, you know, for each member, to make it more of a one-to-one experience when they visited, be relevant to what they were interested in. And so we lined up how we were going to do that, pitched that to our executive team, and they were intrigued, they liked it. But they said at the end, you know, if we gave you a bigger budget, what could you do with that? And that was a really fun idea to bandy about. And that's really when we started down this path of looking into marketing automation platforms. And like I said, that goes back a little over 3 years ago. And at the time, we approached kind of evaluating marketing automation by turning to the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And at the time, we looked at a range of companies. We looked at Adobe, certainly. We also looked at Sitecore. We looked at Marketo. And you know, at the time, Adobe and Marketo were separate companies. Now they've joined forces, and we're very happy to have gone through that process and landed on Marketo. See if we go to this, I'm on your slide now. As part of kind of our evaluation process, when we went to Marketo, we kind of started with our goals. And we'd been dabbling with automating our email marketing. It was not quite to the level that we wanted, though. So email automation was high on our list. We also wanted to make this a multi-channel kind of automation experience, though. And so we asked if they could automate our direct mail. We of course wanted to personalize the website. That's what started this whole ball rolling for us. So personalizing the website based on member data, what we know about our members, and providing kind of the marketing qualified leads to our outbound telemarketing team to kind of provide a multi-channel experience: email, direct mail, website personalization, and telemarketing follow-up. And so if we go to the next slide, you know, when we evaluated that process, Marketo was indeed our choice. And at the time, you know, people thought that was a little intuitive because, Marketo was known as a B2B platform, and most of our business is B2C, business to consumer. But what stood out to kind of us in our evaluation was that Marketo's systems were great for what was considered purchase, right? We have to stay in front of consumers, small businesses who are evaluating their next financial decision. And sales cycles can be long. These are not impulse buys, at least very rarely. Financial services just doesn't seem to kind of fit that mold. So Marketo, in its B2B approach, was perfect for that kind of considered purchase. The other factor that was important to us was that we really wanted to tap into our first-party data, and Marketo and their solution allows us to upload over 109 data points to our custom DB. And that really allows us to use Marketo to kind of drive that personalization, that relevancy that we felt was really critical for us to be able to reach out to people and have them feel like we knew who they were, what would fit their needs at the time. And so we felt we could really tap into the power of that data using Marketo's tools. And then last was that Marketo's script for associating online activity, such as visiting our website, we could place that script inside of our online banking environment. Most people log into online banking with us, as few as a few times a month to as many as sometimes once or more a day. And so we felt like placing that script inside of online banking would create that high degree of associations between online activity and our first-party data to create that known user base. So if you advance to the next slide. So what do we thought we'd talk about what do we do with Marketo. And I thought I would share, 5 pillars kind of our automation strategy with you today. It took us a few months to stand up our first pillar, and then it was about 18 months of work to get all 5 fully implemented in kind of a holistic approach across all of our channels. The next slide. And so the thing that we really liked about Marketo is that it was a multi-channel automation platform. We're not just using it for email, although that is really a backbone of our effort. We use email automation. We also implemented direct mail automation very early on in our implementation process. We use one of Marketo's integration partners, PFL, Printing for Less. They're based in Montana. They send out our postcards and direct mail. We also use website personalization, kind of getting to that one-to-one experience that helps us increase relevancy when people visit our website, and then sending daily leads to our telemarketing team who reach out and touch members in person over the phone to talk with them about what's important to them. So if you go to the next slide, one of the early decisions that we made in that process was to select an implementation partner to help us. I think we recognized, that this was going to be a complex system, and we wanted a partner who could help us avoid some of those common pitfalls. And, in our case, we chose DemandGen, and David Lewis and his team have been instrumental, really, in our efforts to stand up the platform, fully implement the multi-channel approach that we're going to talk about today. And I think that the key advantages that stood out to me, especially looking back on this, was that they helped us kind of avoid those common pitfalls in setting up our data, structuring how we were going to use the system, and then ultimately mapping out how all of these different pieces of that engine that David talked about work together to create a digital experience for our members. It definitely helped us get up to speed faster. I've talked to a number of financial institutions over the last 3 years, and some, are struggling to kind of get it fully implemented. The implementation partners really help in that regard. They do this all the time, and in our case, it really helped us kind of implement faster, but then also to kind of achieve self-sufficiency with that safety net, right? David and his team were great about kind of standing up, the initial legs, for example, of our onboarding program we're going to talk about today. And then we learned from that, And we took on the process of further building out that onboarding process. And Sarah White, for example, on David's team was, she was awesome. She would go through and kind of QA the work that we did to build out what they started for us and kind of validate that, yep, we did it right and that it's correct. And so, when you go about implementing a multi-channel automation system like Marketo, it is complex. We've mapped it out. I kind of affectionately call it the spider web because these things relate to each other, and what happens on one side affects the other. So I really don't think we could have achieved our goals as quickly as we did without the help of DemandGen. So if we go to the next slide, one of the other things that I highly recommend when you go down this path is to kind of have a clear vision of what you want to achieve and implement. In our case, we kind of mapped things out into kind of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 deliverables. We keep our minds kind of closely focused on what was the critical functions we needed to stand up. And how they interrelate and intertwine with each other is something that David and his team helped us also keep in mind, so that we didn't have to undo anything when we moved on to phase 2. And so one of the things that we did, if you advance to the next slide, is we drew out kind of back of the napkin style visualizations that helped us kind of explain in our own minds what we wanted to accomplish. And this diagram that you see before you is one of our early visuals that we used to kind of map out what we thought might be a prototypical member journey and how it might unfold, both from a member experience standpoint and then how the different systems that the marketing automation tool was going to provide would help with that. And so we start with kind of like position number 1 in the upper left corner, this anonymous visitor coming to our website. And before, Marketo, that's what everybody was when they came to our website. They were all anonymous visitors. But as they come to our website and then log into online banking, they get tagged with our first party data and become what is a known user. And if you move on to like spot 4, you can see that known user then drills down to one of our product pages. In this case, we said, well, maybe they visit our credit card page and they see that experience. And by virtue of visiting that page, we're going to talk about lead scoring and some of the nurturing paths that come from that. But an email is oftentimes triggered very early on when somebody visits a product page in our website, arrives in their inbox, and using Marketo, we can actually see it arrive. We can see them open it. We can see them then click on that email and arrive back at our website. And that increments our lead score and triggers an outbound call by our call center team, who might reach out to them and talk about the various credit cards that we offer and which one might be best for them. And then finally, stage 7, the credit card is opened, whether they do it online or in one of our branches, doesn't matter, because their profile is tagged with that new relationship and kind of brings them back into the full circle of the experience, and they continue forward. Which kind of brings us to the next stage of the journey. This is the first of our 5 strategies. If you advance to the next slide, is what we call onboarding. And onboarding is anytime someone opens a new account with us or joins the credit union for the first time, we run them through our onboarding matrix. And this isn't new. I mean, banks and FIs have been doing this for a very long time. But in our case, the onboarding matrix consists of a series of communications using 2 to 3 different channels that vary by the product that the member opened. And in this matrix that you see before you, what you see is that we're the matrix is intelligent. And on the left-hand side, there's some business logic that says, okay, if they opened a product, we make some assumptions about what the next likely product for somebody might be. And if they opened a credit card, like we were talking about, the next likely product that we might want to make them aware of is that we have auto loans, both new and used. And the onboarding matrix starts to present that information to them, oftentimes initially by an email, but then also can involve an automated direct mail piece, usually a postcard for us, that also goes out to them, arrives in their mailbox. And the onboarding matrix using Marketo system can use that kind of intelligent skip logic. So if we know that they already have an auto loan with us, the purpose of our onboarding matrix is to deepen the relationship, expand that share of wallet to products and services that they don't already have with us. So we might skip the auto loan presentation and move on to mortgages. Maybe we know something about their age, and so we present them some information about first-time buyer programs. And as we proceed through the onboarding matrix, this lasts for up to 9 weeks, where we present different products and services as we think they are relevant to what they initially started with on us. And onboarding is a tried and true staple of marketing, and with Marketo, we can automate it and make it a multi-channel experience. So that kind of is the overview of our onboarding strategy. The other strategy, if we move on right there to strategy number 2, is our reboarding. And reboarding is quite literally re-onboarding. And in our case, we run every member through reboarding for the first time at the 6-month anniversary mark of first joining the credit union. And then we go on again at the 1-year anniversary and every year thereafter. And for reboarding, we tap into what we know about the full membership relationship that the member brings to us. And we take advantage of an external demographic append that in our case we do twice per year. We use that data to help categorize all of our members into one of 6 different consumer segments. And the slide that you see before you is the segmentation strategy that we employ. It's based on 2 data elements, age, which we know from when they first open their membership, and then income, which could come from loan documentation, but oftentimes also comes from the external demographic append that we do twice a year. And so you can see that based on this, we can classify them into one of the 6 consumer segments. And each of those segments has been indexed with a propensity for each of the products and services that we offer. We track 9 different lines of business. And for example, in the credit-driven segment, which is one of our larger consumer segments at Rivermark, the credit-driven segment over-indexes for new and used auto loans, student loans, and all of the other products have indexes that kind of bear on the propensity that consumer, based on their age and income, lean toward in terms of receptivity. And so that becomes kind of those propensities become kind of the touchstone for us as to what's the next likely product or service that we should be presenting to that member to see if we can start an engagement path that leads to a deeper relationship. And so just like our onboarding matrix, the reboarding matrix runs each member through kind of this 9-week communication path. Different products and services that we feel are relevant to their consumer segment are presented. And if they engage in that content, then we put that member into different Marketo nurturing paths. And that's where, the next slide kind of shares with you some more details about nurturing paths and the role that they play, if you want to advance to the next slide, the role that they play within Marketo and how you can take advantage of that yourselves. David, over to you.
Yeah, I love the part of your story, David, where, management comes to you and says, if we gave you more money, what could you do to drive more revenue? And I think about often, again, marketing's perception and how marketing is used within an organization. And I think it really highlights the viewpoint that the org has there at Rivermark in terms of your ability to drive revenue. And as you guys saw, like those are literally almost like back of napkin sketches, right? Whiteboard sketches, Visio sketches of where David is saying, let's architect a customer experience. He mentioned earlier that it's a considered purchase, right? This is not one and done batch and blast type marketing where you're going to send a promotion or a 25% off and go get someone to a website and make a purchase. And in an environment like David's and probably many of yours where you're selling to businesses and selling to individuals who need information and education, you can see how David and the team did a great job stringing together not just email communication, but even direct mail as well. And he mentioned PFL, the provider that we integrated into their Marketo instance. So when people go through those nurtures and they get to a certain point in the nurture stream, out goes that direct mail piece to them. So let's talk a little bit about lead management, which, as I said earlier, is part of the demand management area of demand generation. And the two things that David and I are going to focus on specifically are lead nurturing and lead scoring. And so when you think about driving demand, you could take the old approach, which is, you build a list of leads and throw those over the fence to sales and hope they follow up with it. Or you can say, let's have marketing play a much more integrated role in the buyer education process, in the buyer information process. And a very effective way to do that is lead nurturing. And that's where we're going to start. And David, share with you some of the ways and to do that. But I'm going to kind of, tell a little bit more how the sausage is made. For those of you that have never seen Marketo, here's a little screenshot for you as we dive into lead nurturing. And just to kind of go from left to right on the screen that you're looking at, over there on the left-hand side, you can see it has a little orange SMB nurture for a small and medium-sized business nurture. And you can see underneath that, there's a folder called campaigns where it says send email and open tracking and click tracking and conversion tracking and SFDC, which stands for Salesforce.com campaign set. And in every one of those little brown folders and little subfolders are the assets, the touch points that get strung together to create that nurture sequence that you saw David show you from a visualization perspective. It's a matter of literally taking what's on a Visio chart or a Lucid chart or a whiteboard and saying, how do we operationalize that and stitch together all of those actions? And you saw how David said different segmentations. If this person already owns this product, let's move them into this other nurture stream. So that's how you take the vision and you apply that vision that David and the team have for putting that into a system like Marketo. And I got to say, if any of you out there have not invested in a marketing automation system yet, it's kind of like back in the 90s when people would say, do you think I need a website for my business? Who would not have a website for their business these days? So if you're still using a tool like a Constant Contact or what's called an ESP, an email service provider, a batch and blast email tool, and haven't stepped up to these tools that enable nurturing capabilities, you're really missing a lot of the ways that you can have a greater impact in your organization. Let's take a look at some metrics from some third parties about the impact that nurture can have. So we do work with sales, right? Marketing and sales work together. Well, what if sales converted 15% more of the engagement that you're generating into phone calls, first calls with that? That would be phenomenal, and it is. What about companies delivering more sales-ready leads, right? I've heard, I probably should go to therapy for the number of times I've heard sales say, Dave, like all your leads suck. Well, not every lead that marketing generates is a good lead. Not everybody's ready to buy, but nurturing enables you to deliver as much as 50% more sales-ready leads and lowering the cost because we are continuing that engagement at the early stages of demand generation and getting them ready to want to talk to someone in sales for later down in the buying process. Nurture emails, if you're doing batch and blast marketing, who wouldn't like a 4 to 10 times better response rate, right? There is no silver bullet. There's no one and done. So you need to maintain, especially in considered purchase, a steady stream of communication. You saw David map that out. And then, increasing qualified lead conversion, 50%, which is a bunch of benchmarks that Marketo has done across their clientele to see the impact of, cohorts. What if one group didn't go through nurtures? What if another group went through nurtures? What's the difference between these two? Significant results and impact. And you can see some of the metrics around leading to pipeline and 40% larger purchases, right? The more informed, the more educated a buyer is on your solutions, typically the more investment they're going to make, and 47% compared to non-nurtured leads by a report by Gartner. So how does nurturing work? Let's talk about the physical world. Many of us have not been in stores lately, but it wasn't too long ago that we remember that when you walk into a store, you exhibit buying behavior. And anybody who's ever worked in retail knows what these behaviors look like, right? You're going to ask someone maybe in a jewelry store how much something costs or to turn over a price tag. You might try a piece of clothing on, or throw it over your arm, which is a suggestion that you're not there to browse, you're there to buy. You might try something on just standing right there in front of a sales rep and ask a question like, how do I look? Well, all of these behaviors, this body language in the physical world, we're all still doing online. And platforms like Marketo are able to harness that data and insights in what we call digital body language. So digital body language is where we're using technology to look at behavior. And I'll give you some examples of that. David touched on it. What if somebody looks at a specific area of your website? Let's say David's organization, which he does, provides mortgage loans, and one of their customers goes into the area of the website and steps on the mortgage loan pages, clicks on those. What if they look at multiple pages? What if they go deep enough to fill out an application? All of that digital body language is being captured in Marketo, and we're using that to trigger nurtures. If person does this, then send that. And that can be even used to personalize content on the website as well. And that's why I said just a few moments ago that you've got to step up to a marketing automation system versus just an email batch and blast engine, where you're not going to be able to leverage this digital body language and trigger against it. And in a few moments, I'm going to talk about lead scoring, which also capitalizes on digital body language, and how we turn those, leads that sales doesn't think is very sales ready into showing them, hey, these are people who want to engage with you now that marketing has done nurturing. So Dave, I know that you guys have had tremendous success with this and been architecting your website, and maybe you could share a little bit more about how you're using behavior to reveal intent.
Exactly. I mean, this actually was the really the eye-opening system to me of the whole marketing automation program. It's nice to automate the email, automate the direct mail, but when we started tapping into the behaviors that people do online on our website, engaging with our emails, that really revealed their behavior, and their behavior revealed their intent, right? Demographics and propensity are great starting points. We've been using those for literally decades, right? But propensity doesn't reveal whether they're engaged in it right now. And that's where the behavior kicks in and shows that, hey, they're actually interested in that first-time buyer program that we put on our website. And so if you advance to the next slide, we have architected our website to help us unlock whether somebody's interested in one of our products and services. And so our website is built in such a way that in order to get to really more detailed product information, you have to drill down to what we are calling our product pages. And Marketo watches known users, our members, visit a product page. And we find that people do this as part of their earliest investigations while they're considering their next financial decision. Oftentimes they go to our website and that of our competitors before they ever call us on the phone or step foot in a branch. And so they might look at our mortgage rates or our auto loan rates or the different terms and options that are available. We have a blank check pre-approval program when you're shopping for a car. And so Marketo allows us to track what they're engaging in at that moment. And we do that through what's called the lead scoring system of Marketo. And if we advance to the next slide, that really was our fourth pillar of the strategy for Marketo, was to utilize the lead scoring system. And Marketo's system is rather powerful. If we advance to the next slide, we actually started the process when we implemented with them using what was called the engagement model, which is something that tracks whether our users are engaging with our content, whether it's an email or a web page or other forms of our digital outreach. And it was very early in that process, we realized that that would not give us the specificity that we wanted for which product and service they were interested in at that moment. And so we pivoted and turned instead to what was called the multi-model lead scoring. And this is a system that allows us to measure engagement still, but we do it at the product level. Like I said, we have 9 different lines of business that we allow Marketo to kind of watch for those behaviors to occur. And when they trip across something, what's David called it the web page, for example, could also be emails, that increments their lead score and triggers our nurturing path communications. So you can see kind of a typical flow for us in our multi-model lead scoring system is the web page visit increments the lead score. They then get an email, and if they click and open that, it increments the lead score yet again, which might make it appropriate at that time for us to send them a postcard in an offline channel because those are a higher cost. We don't send that to everyone. We reserve that for somebody who's starting to engage with our content in a more meaningful way, show that they're truly interested at that time. So we follow up with a postcard, and then the call center team reaches out and touches them with a phone call. And depending on the product, the multi-model lead scoring system can do that at in different ways for each of the 9 different lines of business that we're tracking. And so David and his team helped us stand up the multi-model lead scoring system to optimize it for each of the 9 different lines of business that we track.
When you when you showed David the auto loan page and people got to see that menu for your site, which had, you had banking, you had investing, you had borrowing, you had almost those different departments, if you will, of your products and services, and kind of coming back to that jewelry store analogy, right? When you walk into a jewelry store, you've got the watches area, you've got the rings area, you've got necklaces, you've got, they lay out a store based on buying behavior, same way your supermarket does that. And so as David and his team is architecting the website into these different departments and areas, as you heard, Dave's created different scoring models with my group so that we can identify people who are a good fit for products and their level of engagement. So what you're seeing now on the screen is a screenshot from Salesforce.com. I know a lot of you use Salesforce.com. What you may not have ever seen is really good quality lead scoring. And picture for a moment in your mind that you're a sales rep and you log in and this is what you see. So instead of seeing a bunch of records without any kind of priority, you're seeing stars and thumbs and flames or whatever iconography we put into our client system so that you can say, you know what, this guy at the top looks like Justin. Justin's A-rated. He is very qualified, 3 thumbs up and 3 flames, a lot of interest, meaning that his digital body language is kind of going through the roof. And then they can prioritize their time. So in terms of what lead scoring does for you, it creates efficiency and effectiveness for your sales team. We can advance, Meg. And the ranking of each lead is what you're seeing displayed right there in Salesforce, right? Who are the A's, the B's, and the C's? And when this is done really well between marketing and sales, there's a service level agreement, an SLA that says, hey, sales, if marketing generates an A, then you're going to follow up in a certain way. If it's a B, maybe a different way. And if it's a C, a different way. So you're helping create sales efficiency because you're scoring and prioritizing every lead and tightly aligning sales and marketing. Well, how do we score these? Let's unpack that a little bit more and talk about a 2-dimensional lead scoring model. In the 2-dimensional lead scoring model, we're using 2 variables. One is the fit. And that normally comes from the data that we know on this person. Might be their industry, company size, might be the technology that they use within their company. Whatever variables that I like to call the tall, dark, and handsome criteria, and you'll understand why I use that in a minute, is what we're saying, this is a fit, where marketing and sales have kind of sat down and said, we're looking at a fit. Using David as an example, right? If the person is the owner of the account at the bank, if they are maybe of a certain age, maybe indicating that they're at a certain age ready for college, if they are filling in information on forms that tells the sales team and marketing team how well qualified they are for a certain product at Rivermark, that's explicit information. That's the fit information. The engagement score is the digital body language. And as David and I have been saying, we can track that through the website. We can track that through email. We can track that through each of the different touch points that is being connected within Marketo. We can even say, for example, if sales is conducting a meeting with them, we can take that data that resides over in the CRM and bring that in and increase their engagement score because they're willing to take a meeting with them. And what we'll do when we design lead scoring models is we'll take some of the experience that we have in designing these models and apply it, such as we know, I'll give you one secret recipe. We know that if someone visits a website more than 2 times, so not 2 times, but more than 2 times within 30 days, that's almost a trigger, an alarm bell that there's a surge in buying behavior. Because many of you know, if you've looked at your website activity, you have a high bounce rate. Someone comes to your website, they leave. They don't even come back and they're not there for more than just a page. What if they came back a second time? Well, that's a bit of a surge. But if they come back a third time within a month, you're really seeing a surge in that behavior. So just advancing forward, I mentioned the tall, dark, and handsome criteria. Many of us probably remember the marketing that eHarmony did, and they talked about the 29 dimensions of compatibility, that they had, a whole science to matchmaking. And this is very much, lead scoring is very much a science of matchmaking for prospects for you and your products and services. And if we advance again, when we take that fit information and the digital body language and we algorithmically put it together to say, okay, well, here's their level of engagement, and then here's their fit score, that's where the A's, the B's, the C's, and the D's come from. That's where you see those lead scores in the lead scoring system. So that's the magic of lead scoring, and some of the ideas of how we did that with Rivermark. And in David's case, there was many different models because he has different products and services, and we can show fit and engagement for those different areas. And now we're going to wrap up with two more strategies that David done. One is on website personalization, and then in digital advertising.
Right, and it's funny, David, that website personalization was the impetus of getting us into marketing automation, and yet it was the last of the strategies that we deployed in the journey that we went through.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you advance to the next slide, what I've done is just kind of screenshotted one of our home pages. We've got the home page, that the big hero image in the background there is what a user would see when they come to our website, and that is being personalized one-to-one based on the consumer segment that the known user has been classified in, and it presents what we think is the next likely product or service that they don't yet have with us, and to see if we can get them to engage on it. Because in banking and credit unions, financial services, a lot of people come to our website, they're on a mission to log into online banking. So the other thing that we personalize is the login modal box itself. That banner image that you see, the Rivermark mobile app, is something that would be personalized to somebody who we think is a good target for that, based on the fact that they don't yet have it, and we want them to take a look at it. So we personalize the homepage, we personalize the login page to online banking, and there's a lot more that is still to be done for us in terms of using the web personalization engine that Marketo provides elsewhere on our website. So website personalization was the last thing we implemented. It took us about 18 months after getting everything else in place to really take advantage of that. But right now, that becomes kind of that propensity, that starting point for deepening the relationship and leading to a lead score that allows us to nurture them on something that they're actually interested in. It might be worth noting, David, we talk about the personalization process. It's really a question of relevancy. We've been doing email marketing even before we had Marketo, and we had opt-out rates. We'd send people emails and people would opt out. When we send them an email communications regarding something that the lead score says that they are interested in, our average opt-out rate is way below 0.1%. 0.05% is kind of our average for nurture path communications. And so what that tells us is that people are interested in getting more information about the products and services they've shown us that they're interested in, and we track that through the lead scoring. All right, so the last thing, if you want to advance the slide, is this is all part of a greater strategy about how digital fits into our framework. And we're using a lot of the digital tools to kind of feed the machine that we have set up with Marketo. We still do batch and blast saturation campaigns, both with email and direct mail, but we're doing it even more now with Marketo. We still do our digital advertising. We pull prospects to our website, whether it's from PPC advertising or programmatic ads, digital displays, even geofencing with mobile, and doing that with a full digital tool chest. For those of you who have experimented or are using perhaps daily credit monitoring, this has been a really great thing that we use Marketo for. We're monitoring existing members in case they get wooed away or directed perhaps by a realtor to another competitor for a home loan. And so using Marketo, we get a daily feed of those members who might be considering someone else's solution. And we use Marketo to nurture and stay in front of prospects who we feel should be aware of our solution. And we've seen pretty good success with that, 7% take rate on clawing kind of that business back to Rivermark. But the nurturing path is what allows us to stay in front of them. And we use email, direct mail, and telephone call, all as part of the daily credit monitoring solution to kind of win that business back. The last thing I want to move on to is kind of some things to think about if you haven't yet pulled the trigger on a marketing automation system. Organizing your data is one of the first things that your implementation partner will help you with. In our case, and for those of you in credit unions, move on to the next slide, the kind of levels of data is an important consideration for how you're going to structure your Marketo DB. For credit unions, of course, we've got the membership. It's kind of the household at the top of the pyramid there. Below that is the individual, and you might have multiple individuals within a membership. In our case, we're a credit union that's embraced kind of the individual ID. And so everything we do within Marketo is centered upon the individual ID. And underneath that individual ID are the accounts that the person has as part of their relationship. And those accounts then have transactions. And so depending on how you are going to use the data that you have at your disposal to watch for triggers that you feel are going to be relevant triggers for you to reach out and make an offer, a presentation, or nurture somebody along their path, this is an important level of discussion that you'll have early on in your journey. So, in my conclusion, I just want to say, tapping into behavior to reveal the intent of your members and your prospects is really one of the coolest things I think about marketing automation platforms in general. I do highly recommend that you find an implementation partner that you can trust to help shepherd you through the early decisions and the learning curve that you'll climb to kind of fully implement a multi-channel implementation. And really to think of marketing automation not just as an online only tool for email and the digital effort, but also how offline channels can all work together in kind of an integrated fashion to leverage greater and greater degrees of success. David, back to you.
Yeah, before we wrap up, Dave, and take questions. So now is a great time for those of you that have questions. We got a good solid 10 minutes for questions, so we'll take a bunch. I want to point out something, David, and by asking you a question. How many people are on your marketing team? Because I bet there's a lot of people who are thinking like, wow, to do all this work and get all this done, I'm going to need a big, huge team, and this is going to be really expensive to do it. And we do work with enterprise customers who have 80 people on their marketing team. But Dave, what's the headcount on your marketing team at Rivermark Credit Union?
Well, we're approaching 900 million in assets, so we're not a multi-billion institution. My marketing team, we have 6 people plus me. And a couple of them work in Marketo on a daily basis, but it's not the full scope of what they do. They've got other roles and responsibilities. So, the nice thing about the automation system that one of the reasons that we drove toward it is that we don't have to babysit things. You have a lift to get a program into place. And I wouldn't say it's set it and forget it, but it automatically kind of just chugs along based on the rules that you set up. And so with our 6-person team, we've been able to fully implement the multi-channel program that we've described today.
Yeah, I just want to make sure people know, because I think they feel like, God, I'm gonna need a small army to do all this work, and you really don't. You figured out your website, you figured out other marketing technologies, and Marketo is one of those platforms to do that. And I appreciate, Dave, all the shout outs to our team. We love what we do, and help getting you guys on your journey and getting you propped up has been terrific. Let me point out a few more resources for you guys that are going to be sent to you. So we could, this could have been a full day in terms of education and going deep into these things. So I want to make sure that you guys know, like, I've got a book called Manufacturing Demand, and I like to kid around and say I'm on the New York Times best giver list. So you are going to get an email after this webinar with a link that you can download the entire book, which goes deep into scoring and nurturing and analytics and the demand funnel, as well as building buyer persona. So that's coming your way. Also, I do a weekly podcast, of which yours truly, David Eldred, and I did an episode together, episode number 153. David and I did. So if you happen to be in banking and financial services and you want to go and hear more of David's story, you can. But there's another 100 and almost 200 episodes of podcasts. And hey, if you have a story to tell, we'd love to get you on the podcast at some point so that we can all learn together. And then the last resource center we have for you is on our website at DemandGen.com. It is like a public library of incredible content to help you with best practices and methodologies. And so that's at DemandGen.com. You are going to get links to all of these resources and encourage you to grab whatever you want there that's going to help you in your education and you on your journey. And of course, if you need any additional insights, education, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, David Lewis, and I'm sure David Eldred would be happy, as he's done with other, I know, financial institutions and others, offered some guidance and support. So I'm going to wrap up there while we take some questions. Megan, thank you so much to you and the team at Adobe to have David and David, both of us here today to share one of those success stories. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you both. I really appreciate it. I know that everybody has a lot of challenges that they're facing at home. So thank you guys for taking the time to put together all of the content. And I certainly enjoyed it coming from a digital marketing perspective. I'm glad to be back in the field. And as David Lewis mentioned, we do have perfect timing, actually, guys. We do have a few minutes to take questions. So if you can go ahead and send those in, you can send them in through the chat. You can raise your hand, however you feel like interacting. But I will go ahead and kick off some of the questions that we have already received. And thank you, Scott. From standing up pillar 1 of onboarding to pillar 5, website personalization, what was the time period?
Right. So in our case, it took us about 3 months to get onboarding stood up. There's kind of a maturity. We have to ease into the emailing system so that we don't end up in a spam folder. And so there's a nice little process that David and his team kind of stepped us through, kind of ramping up our email volume so that we would get a good score. The biggest part was kind of building out the matrix. And that's, something that we were fortunate enough to have already been thinking about how email matrices work in an onboarding kind of environment. So we had, I think, about 60 different emails we had already written on a different system, and we kind of ported those over and expanded them to about 120, 9 different lines of business. And so it took us about 3 months to get kind of up to speed. Went through a bunch of training programs that Marketo provided. Marketo Foundations is really highly advised. So 3 months to get started. And then after that, it was a build out process of onboarding, the reboarding, the lead scoring, setting up our direct mail partnership with PFL. They've been instrumental in that, and we've just continued to kind of expand those. And then, like I said, at the end there, website personalization was one of the last pillars that we stood up, and that was at about the 18-month mark. We could have probably done it sooner, but we really wanted to kind of digest and also learn from each of these systems as we stood them up. What was the attribution, if we could get to, like, how much does onboarding add to our cross-sale ratio? How much does reboarding then begin to increment a higher share of wallet? How is the direct mail working in conjunction with that? And then ultimately lead scoring and website personalization all working together to increment steadily higher and higher share of wallet.
Great, thanks, David. You had mentioned that you added a script to the online banking. Can you elaborate on what that accomplishes with the integration to Marketo?
Do you want to take that, Dave, or you can go for it?
Well, I'll start because it does start to get technical. You probably have better insight on that. We put it inside our online banking environment itself because we know that many of our members, that's like their go-to mission. They want to log into online banking or check in on mobile to get their balances. And so we felt we would get a higher initial immediate kind of pop to that lead associate ID call that happens between the I'm going to call it a cookie. I'm not sure that that's what the session that the browser has to the first party data, and make that connection so our first party data is being leveraged. And we put it into online banking because of the high degree with which people engage in online banking. And we were able to get our association up into the high 90s in terms of penetration, correlating known first party data to a user on our website and our emails. David, you probably can expand greater on that.
Yeah, just real simple. It's called the Munchkin script. I don't know the history of where that term comes from in Marketo, but it's called the Munchkin script, and it's about 15 lines of JavaScript code that you just put in the footer or header of every page of your website. So it's part of the implementation where we just take these lines of code and we drop it on every page of the site. As David was saying, once that's on there, then every website visitor through cookies and tracking their digital body language, it is sent and fed into Marketo. So even though there might, for example, not be a form on that site for something to fill out, we know who's been on that page, how often they have visited that page, and even can look at the sequencing of pages together inside Marketo and string together that said if somebody went here, here, and here, do the following things. So very, very easy to deploy. It takes literally minutes to do so across your website.
Right. It's not the only method by which you can create that association. So if your online banking vendor doesn't allow you to put scripts inside the online banking environment, you have other mechanisms. I think the typical way is to get the member to click on an email that you send, and that can also create that association.
That's correct.
We did it within online banking, and we were able to get into the high 90s in terms of associations very quickly. So I hope that answers the question.
And it works across all mobile devices as well. So whether the person's visiting on a browser or visiting on a mobile device, or even at home through a browser, that association all links. It creates a profile for the user. So independent of their IP address, it knows that this is the particular browser buyer that is engaging with you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you both. And David Eldred, you had mentioned focusing on data, but is there anything else that you recommend, either David or David, that you recommend for someone who doesn't yet have this advanced marketing automation platform?
Well, we started the whole process even before Marketo with kind of thinking about the journeys that our members and prospects go on in order to evaluate who we are, what we provide, and whether we are going to be their choice. And it's typical sales funnel kind of thing. You can't be a choice if nobody knows you're a choice. So that's where the digital advertising component of what we do, even today, and even before Marketo kicks in. We were doing PPC, programmatic, like I said, the mobile advertising, geofencing. All of this works together to kind of identify, create awareness. And then think about, like, once people become aware and start to explore you, what can you do, whether it's through a marketing automation platform or perhaps an email platform that you're already on. I know some of the tools within the email ESP environment have certainly expanded. We started down the path of trying to automate our onboarding through email before we came to Marketo. And like I said, that helped provide a foundation that we were able to quickly port over from the ESP into Marketo and get us up to speed that much faster. So I think there's things that you can think of just in terms of the digital journeys that people undertake to drive awareness, foster that investigatory kind of intent, and then help them make that decision in favor of your institution.
Great, thank you so much. And again, perfect timing. For those of you who did submit questions that we didn't have time to get to today, we will definitely be following up, and everybody who registered and joined us today will be getting all of those great resources that David Lewis mentioned. So thank you to everybody who took the time to join today. And thank you, David from Rivermark, for your participation and sharing your story. And thank you to the whole DemandGen team for putting the content together.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you, Meg.
Great to be here. Thank you.